Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Live is IBA's Viva Press with an update. Viva, what can you tell us?
Hi, Leah. As you reported, Islamic Jihad did take responsibility for the attack. According to a Ynet report, Palestinian sources told them that it was a 22-year-old Nablus youth involved in the Islamic Jihad organization. Police have raised the level throughout Israel in the wake of the attack. Roadblocks have been set up throughout the country. Witnesses at the bombing site said that the terrorist came into the shawarma stand. He was selling razor blades, and inside his bag was actually the bomb. He detonated inside the eatery, and that's where most of the damage took place. Magen David Adom are saying now that there are 2 people in serious condition as opposed to 1. 3 people are in moderate condition, and about a dozen are lightly injured. Whereas we reported at first that all the wounded were taken to Tel Aviv hospitals, they were actually taken both to Tel Aviv and Holon hospitals. And again, there's a hotline for Russian speakers: English, Hebrew, Amharic, French, Spanish. The number is 1255081010. Just one last thing. Almost all the reports are now talking about how this will affect the Palestinian elections next week, whether or not the bomb will cast a shadow over those elections. Leah.
Viva Press, thank you very much indeed for that update. And in fact, joining me now in the studio to discuss that very subject is Mark Regev, spokesman for the Foreign Ministry. Thank you, Mark, for coming to our studio today. Let's begin with that. Will, in fact, today's terror attack have any impact at all on the Palestinian elections from Israel's point of view?
Well, I don't think so. You've got a group here, Islamic Jihad, that wants to torpedo the Palestinian elections, who wants to torpedo the chance of peace, of moving forward, who wants to not only kill innocent people, but they want to kill the chances for peace. And if there's a message that we take from today, first of all, we were very lucky, because it could have been a lot worse. And secondly, this is a final straw in many ways. The Palestinian Authority must follow through on its commitment to disarm these extreme groups.
Mark, how many final straws have there been, and how many more will there be?
I think Acting Prime Minister Olmert was very explicit this week. He said the Palestinian Authority has said after the election, well, the election is next week, and after the election is a day after the election. We expect immediately following the election that the Palestinian leadership move from words to action and start taking the guns away from these groups.
And actually, it's interesting because Ehud Olmert was very conciliatory just this week towards Abu Mazen, towards Mahmoud Abbas, and said he was ready to sit down with him after the elections. And we get this, we get the attack.
Well, let me say we still are. After our elections, after their elections, we want to move forward with negotiations, with political negotiations, hopefully in high gear, moving forward. But I think everyone has to understand that these groups, like Islamic Jihad, like Hamas, they don't want to see peace. They don't want to see reconciliation. They're the enemies of both Israel and the Palestinians in that they don't want to build a better future. Right. And it's just so important that these groups are neutralized.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, and finally, one very important point. The attack took place near the old central bus station in Tel Aviv, where lots of foreign workers live, many of them illegal foreign workers. What sort of impact will that have on the people living in that neighborhood?
Well, first of all, I wish them all well, and I can say, I've heard from the Ministry of Interior that people who seek medical help and have questionable status here, they don't have to worry that this will be used as an excuse to deport them or something like that. If you want medical help, go get medical help. Don't be afraid.
Right. Well, that's very important information. Mark Regev, Foreign Ministry spokesman, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
السيد خالد البطش القيادي في حركة الجهاد الإسلامي. سيد خالد، يعني هناك من يقول أن الحساب.
With us over the phone, Mr. Khalid Al Baddsh, a leader from the Islamic Jihad movement. Some people are saying this operation was not well calculated and might further isolate the Islamic Jihad. and that the results were not as expected because it may have repercussions on the Palestinians.
من تداعيات على الداخل الفلسطيني.
أولا أخي الفاضل، تحية لك ولضيفك الكريم، وتحية لأهلنا في نابلس ولعائلة الشهيد سامي عنتر.
نعم.
First of all, greetings to you and your honorable guest, to our people in Nablus and the family of the martyr Sami Antar. I would like to remind the audience that the Palestinian Authority has never said that any of the resistance operations that have been carried out during the past 5 years happened at the right time. Every time a heroic operation was carried out by Al-Aqsa brigades or other national resistance groups such as Abu Ali Mustafa, the Palestinian Authority said that these operations were at the wrong time and that they did not serve the interests of the Palestinian people. However, at the end of the day, it turned out that all these operations serve the interests of the Palestinian people because they contributed in forcing the occupation to withdraw from Gaza. This was also evident by the willingness of Sharon, before he had the stroke, to speak about the unilateral withdrawal plan from the northern West Bank, despite its political setbacks, because he was afraid to continue in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nablus. Today's operation was carried out by the Palestinian resistance, represented by the Jerusalem Brigades, and came after a series of assassinations that targeted a number of leaders from Al-Qassam Brigades and the Jerusalem Brigades, such as Adil Abu Ghassan and Mu'taz Abu Khalil, in addition to the massacre of the mother and her child, who were killed in their home. We are being killed in the streets and in our homes, and thus today's operation comes in response to these massacres and assassinations. Perhaps the general atmosphere gave the Zionist enemy the impression that the Palestinian resistance has stopped its activities because most Palestinian factions are busy with the elections.
سؤال أخير سيد خالد يتعلق ب
I have one last question, Mr. Khalid. Some are saying that the Islamic Jihad is becoming more isolated because the Palestinian Authority and Fatah have taken positions against you. We do not know who else will take positions against you. Are you ready to face this opposition, and do you have a plan to deal with this possible scenario?
This analysis is very wrong. The ones who are spreading these rumors are those who are looking forward to gain seats in the legislative elections. They are looking for political gains here and there. However, they will pay political prices for their positions. The Islamic Jihad has been able to lead the resistance, unfortunately single-handedly, against the Zionist war machine since March 2005 until now. We are facing this war machinery and assassinations, and we carried out 7 martyrdom operations against the Zionist enemy so far. We have launched 500 missiles against Israeli settlements, and we have carried out spectacular operations. It is impossible to isolate us, and I tell you that those who are trying to isolate the Islamic Jihad are the same ones who are seeking to gain seats at the Palestinian Legislative Council in the coming elections.
President Mahmoud Abbas described the incident that took place in Tel Aviv this evening as sabotage, which wounded 16 Israelis and killed the perpetrator. He confirmed that those who carried out this operation are transgressors, acting outside national Palestinian consensus.
فإن هذا العمل من شأنه أن يؤثر أو هم أرادوه أن يؤثر على العملية الانتخابية الديمقراطية التي ستجري بعد أقل من
Surely, this action affects, or they want it to affect, the democratic election process that will take place in less than a week, and they want to sabotage the security situation for everyone. I do not think it came from any Palestinian faction, despite the fact that some of them claim that others did it. I fear that this operation was carried out to serve foreign interests, but the Palestinian national interests require that every responsible and loyal Palestinian not commit such actions. We know that there are Israeli violations, and supposedly we, the Palestinian Authority, deal with the Israeli government and demand it to stop these violations. No one has the right to take the law into their own hands. As I say every time, we will not be silent about these violations, and we are now looking to find out what group was behind this act.
كما قلت في كل مرة نحن لن نسكت عن هذه الخروقات ونحن نتابع الآن معرفة الجهة والمصدر الذي يقف وراءها.
If it turns out the Islamic Jihad is behind this incident, will you be taking any measures against Islamic Jihad?
للآن لم يثبت أن هذا العمل من قبل الجهاد.
Until now, it hasn't been confirmed that this act was carried out by the Islamic Jihad. One person from the movement spoke out, but he did not claim responsibility. Thus, we cannot prejudge and say that only one group is responsible. However, if it was this group that committed this act, we will have some other words to tell them.
Leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, says science is deemed as highly sacred in Islam and that reaching high levels of science is the main duty of students and academicians. Ayatollah Khamenei reiterated economic, political, and cultural might of a nation stems from the nation's scientific might. Thereby, as the leader added, Iran needs to fill the scientific gap between itself and advanced countries of the world to convince the world public opinion over the rightfulness of Iranian nation in materializing their objectives. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, currently in Syria, told his counterpart Bashar al-Assad Thursday that resistance by the two Muslim nations has led to the removal of extensive problems endured over the past decades.
The pair also underlined Tehran and Damascus share common viewpoints on Iraq and voiced their support for the domination of public will in the war-torn Iraq. Tehran and Damascus also revised the latest developments in Palestine and Lebanon and said constant resistance is the sole solution which guarantees restoration of Palestinians' rights. Later in the day, Iranian and Syrian presidents appeared in a joint press conference where President Bashar al-Assad said Syria is strongly opposed to the imposition of pressure against Iran over its peaceful nuclear program. Mr. Assad also welcomed the continuation of nuclear talks between Iran and the parties involved. President Ahmadinejad, for his part, said Syria is on the front line of the resistance against occupation. He added Tehran and Damascus should promote bilateral cooperation to fulfill their objectives.
Russia has once again called for refraining from any hasty action over Tehran's nuclear case. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in a joint press conference with his French counterpart that the onus is on technical and legal experts from the IAEA to comment on Iran's nuclear program. The top Russian diplomat said the West should cooperate with the UN nuclear watchdog to resolve the issue. Reports say France has apparently failed to drum up Russia's support against Iran. China is meanwhile insisting that continuation of talks between Tehran and the parties involved holds the key to resolve the Iranian nuclear case. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Kong Guan has said that peaceful negotiations will lead to ending the dispute. This comes as German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier, in a contradictory remark, welcomed negotiations with Iran and said possible referral of Iran to the UN Security Council is within diplomatic framework.
Amidst international pressure being placed on Damascus and Tehran and the possibility of international sanctions being imposed on them, the Iranian president held talks with his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad about a number of bilateral and regional matters. In his first official foreign visit since being elected as president last year, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad left for the Syrian capital of Damascus to meet Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, a visit with many implications, not excluding the timing and political and strategic goals which these two countries will achieve through this meeting. For example, this comes at a time when both of these countries are placed under American and international pressure and both face the possibility of sanctions. Iran is being pressured because of its nuclear file. Syria is being pressured for being behind the assassination of Hariri and creating instability in Iraq. A new challenge is facing both countries in the weeks to come, including pressure to implement all articles of United Nations Security Council resolution relating to disarming militia groups in Lebanon, hinting to Hezbollah. Through this meeting, both countries are attempting to send more than one message abroad, the most important being that both countries do not live in isolation. Rather, they carry strong regional cards, as was expressed by both presidents.
In regard to Lebanese issues, we reaffirmed our support for stability in Lebanon and the need to continue to support the resistance in Lebanon, as well as prohibiting any intervention in internal Lebanese affairs or attempts to internationalize them. We expressed our support of Iran in its right to obtain peaceful nuclear technology. We welcome the continued negotiations on this issue between Iran and the relevant international parties. We reject all attempts to place pressure on Iran concerning this issue.
Perhaps the visit by Ahmadinejad succeeded in fulfilling both presidents' desire to send a message to all international parties while maintaining their economic interests as expressed in the bilateral agreements signed between Tehran and Damascus.
The Iraqi President, Jalal Talabani, has accepted the nomination for a second term handed to him by the Iraqi Kurdish Alliance. Mr. Talabani pointed out that his executive power should also be expanded. In another unrelated development, violence continues to escalate in Iraq. More than 20 people, including military and civilian personnel, have been killed in sporadic attacks throughout the country. According to the United States Embassy in Baghdad, a roadside bomb exploded, targeting an American military convoy, killing 2 American contractors and seriously injuring another in the city of Basra, south of Iraq. In a joint military offensive operation in the municipality of Anbar, the American and the Iraqi forces continue to pound armed group strongholds in order to root out what they have called the insurgency.
The next stage in Iraq may witness the amendment of the new constitution. Meanwhile, the Iraqi president, Jalal Talabani, has accepted nomination for a second term. Mr. Talabani has previously rejected the nomination, claiming that the position of the president is only an honorary one. Nevertheless, he reconsidered his decision and accepted the nomination. He also demanded that his executive power and presidential authority be expanded.
According to the Iraqi constitution, the position of the president is only honorary. We have reached an agreement with the Judicial Committee to amend the constitution. We will rephrase the article pertaining to the position of the president to read the Presidential Office of the Republic instead of the President of the Republic. It will also be revised to extend certain privileges to the president. This was our preliminary agreement regarding the amendment to the constitution.
The Iraqi Kurds are very determined to take part in leading the country. President Talabani is looking forward to working with the new government to reach mutual agreement regarding certain constitutional definitions such as the Presidential Office of the Republic, the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Ministers. He is willing to change the constitution if it is deemed necessary.
I believe that the constitution at this point of time does not need to be amended. However, if our brothers, the Sunni Arabs, insist on amending it, we will study the articles that need to be revised.
On the ground, unknown armed men have opened fire on a convoy belonging to the Iraqi Safety Corporation west of Baghdad, killing 10 Iraqis. The assailants also abducted 2 African engineers working for the Iraqi telecommunication company. The 2 hostages were traveling in the convoy. Moreover, a roadside bomb targeting an Iraqi police vehicle exploded in the town of Saidiyya near Baquba, killing 5 officers and injuring 9 others. 11 Iraqi police officers and soldiers have been found shot to death in the area of Tarmiya north of Baghdad. Before they were executed, the victims have been bound, gagged, and blindfolded. Furthermore, the Delaim tribal leader has been assassinated in the area of Ramadi, and the Bujleib tribal leader and 2 others have been also killed in the area of Baiya, west of Baghdad. In another unrelated development, the National Committee for Rooting Out Baathists has confirmed that the Honorable Judge Sassid al-Hamashi should not be allowed to preside over the next court session in the trial of the ousted Iraqi President Saddam Hussein, because his name is included in the list of Baathists who may not hold positions in Iraqi special courts. The committee has confirmed that it was its duty to point out this mishap, but the final decision rests in the hands of court officials.
Security and medical sources announced the martyrdom of no less than 22 Iraqi citizens and the injury of 26 others due to 2 terrorist attacks that targeted a restaurant in Baghdad's Saddoun district. The sources confirmed that the injured were transported to nearby hospitals and some of them were in critical condition.
مقهى شعبي ومواطنون أبرياء كان الهدف لإجرام.
A restaurant, a residential cafe, and innocent civilians were all the targets of crimes committed by the murderers today in Bab al-Shaqiya neighborhood. The terrorists used explosives to carry out this heinous act, ending the lives of many. The terrorist explosion in the cafe led to the martyrdom of 22 civilians. It seems as though the blood that has been shed is not quenching the thirst of the terrorists. Within a few minutes of this explosion, a booby-trapped car exploded in the same area. It was parked on the side of the street, and once again the civilians were the target of this attack, causing an additional 22 civilian deaths and leaving 23 others injured. Rescue teams and ambulances rushed to the scene to transport the injured. These explosions come at a time as the Defense and the Interior Ministries talk about their security plan for the year 2006. A situation which will increase the amount of security equipment and the Iraqis' willingness to fight terrorism. Haidar al-Aboudi, al-Iraqiyya, Baghdad.
The 1st Brigades under the Iraqi Infantry Unit, with help from multinational forces, were able to surround and search neighborhoods in northern Baghdad. During this operation, they discovered weapons and equipment and arrested 9 suspects. In another development, the multinational forces arrested one of the suspected individuals in the Hurriya district in Baghdad. Eyewitnesses said that the arrest came after a suspected house was raided early this morning. Witnesses also said that nearby houses faced some damage as a result of the raid.
أن أضرارا لحقت بالمنازل المجاورة نتيجة عملية الدهم هذه.
The United States froze the U.S. assets of Syrian military intelligence director Asif Shaukat, accusing him of fomenting terrorism against Israel and backing Syria's intrusion in Lebanon. White House spokesman Scott McClellan said that the action was a significant signal, quote, that those like Shaukat who support Syria's terrorism will be held to account. The U.S. Treasury did not specify whether Shaukat had any assets in the U.S. Washington also accused Shaukat of cooperating with groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in his position as military intelligence chief.
Among other things, this order allows. We remain deeply concerned about Syria's destabilizing behavior in the Middle East and its continued support for terrorism. The regime in Syria has failed to comply with several Security Council resolutions. Mr. Shawkat, as Syria's Chief of Military Intelligence, has directly contributed to Syria's support for terrorism, including the insurgency in Iraq, Palestinian terrorist groups, given shelter in Damascus, and Hezbollah and other terrorist groups in Lebanon. Mr. Shawkat has also been deeply involved in Syria's ongoing interference in the destabilization of Lebanon. Today's action is a significant signal that those like Mr. Shawkat, who support Syrian terrorism, will be held to account. As Director of the Syrian Military Intelligence, Mr. Shawkat has been a key architect of Syria's domination of Lebanon and a contributor to Syria's long-standing policy to support terrorism against Israel. He oversaw the Syrian security forces inside Lebanon, so those are the reasons.
The United States, France, and Britain submitted to the UN Security Council a presidential statement regarding the implementation of Resolution 1559. It hailed the Lebanese government for the steps it took to regain all its territorial power, and it called for the establishment of diplomatic relations and border demarcation with Syria. The three permanent council members expressed their worries regarding the constant terrorist attacks in Lebanon, adding that these attacks were part of a strategic plan aimed at destabilizing the country. The statement said that as they took notice of the developments in the implementation of 1559, in which the Syrian troops withdrew, but urged the execution of all other clauses, such as the disarmament of Hezbollah and of the Palestinian factions, the complete power of Lebanese security on its territory, and the need to have a free and fair election. The Druze community on the Syrian Golan Heights sent a communique to the head of the Progressive Socialist Party, MP Walid Jumblat, in which they hailed his position and called him a great Arab leader. They said Jumblat's honest and courageous stance brought them hope that they were still righteous people in the decades times that Arab world has passing through. The community said it was sold cheaply, just like the Palestinians, by demonizing Ba'athist regime, which did not fire one single bullet against Israel from the Golan Heights, but kept military bases under the command of Maher Assad, President Bashar al-Assad's brother, to protect the Jewish state. They further said Jumblat was right when he said that those who stole and killed in Lebanon and Syria would not free the Heights, nor would they free Lebanon or Syria.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.
Is this the Iraq war you never see on American TV? Unfiltered, uncensored, unafraid to venture into uncharted territory? Now you can play an important role in keeping this Peabody Award-winning news digest on the air, delivering cutting-edge news from the Middle East. Become a member of the Mosaic Club today. From the basic membership to the producer circle, each level comes with unique gifts and privileges, including the Mosaic tote bag, and a weekly subscription to the Mosaic Intelligence Report, an e-letter highlighting the week's events in the region. Some members will receive a DVD of Occupied Minds, a journey into the heart of Israel and Palestine, or will recognize your important role by putting your name in the show credits. Some memberships include a tour of Link TV studios in San Francisco, invitations to special events, and lunch with Mosaic's producer. Join the Mosaic team. Help keep critical news from the Middle East on the air. Just log on to www.linktv.org/Mosaic Club to learn how you can join the Mosaic Club today.